Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this Memorial Day ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they really do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this night-ending bonus upload, shall we? Today's first part of the upload. Hello everyone, my name is Fran and I live in Springfield, Massachusetts. Back in May of 1973, I was a Marine. We did a battalion-sized exercise in the area of California, known as Casey Springs. We were told that there were no roads to get in there, so we were inserted by helicopter. I was sent out on a midnight ambush with 15 other Marines. It was a computerized war game. It worked on the computer, so they sent Marines out to see if it could feasibly be done. What we did was we were going after an aggressive force. We set up in a linear-shaped ambush, shaped like an L, and when our victims walk into it, we open fire, a computerized kill. Well, we set up this ambush at midnight, and we had 2 individuals walk into our ambush, and we opened fire with blanks. And as it turns out, we thought they were bears. So we scrambled, shooting our blanks at these individuals, and they separated. One went one way, the other went the other. We got back to our PPB, which is our platoon-sized patrol base, and we told our lieutenant what had happened. He radioed it to our commander. This was the first night of a 4-day war game, and it was canceled. We were given orders to light a large fire, get a fixed bayonet, and stand on a 360 around our blazing fire. All throughout the night, we heard high-pitched, the only way I can describe it was that of a death call of a bear. And in the morning, we had 2 helicopters come in with base game wardens and some other fellas. To this day, I don't know who they were. We were made to bring them back to the area where this had happened. 2 of the individuals walked where we directed them, and we were ordered to leave the area. And this is something the Marine Corps does not do to cancel computerized war game. There were over 3,000 Marines involved in this. The logistics and money that was spent on this, and it was canceled. Today's second part of the upload comes to us from the Ural Mountains, 1997. A soldier of a local military unit, who was also the cook at the radar post deep in the dense forest, had gone to the perimeter fence of his unit in order to obtain some firewood from logs already prepared and positioned near the fence. He needed to prepare dinner for the company. The time was a little bit after breakfast, the weather was good and frosty with lots of snow on the ground. It was a good, clear day. Suddenly, he saw 2 hairy humanoids, one about 2.2 meters in height, the second about 1.7 meters. Both were covered in dense fur, kind of dirty red in color. The soldier thought that the taller entity was female and the second, shorter one probably a child. Both entities had penetrated inside the perimeter of the unit, possibly attracted by the smell of the kitchen area. The witness was carrying an axe, and for some strange reason was not afraid, only curious, and walked toward the creatures in an attempt to obtain a better look. Amazingly, he wasn't able to approach the pair, since both constantly seemed to move ahead of him. He couldn't make up any ground between them, so he increased his pace. But at the same time, the entities increased theirs, moving quickly away from him. Finally, moving faster and faster, the entities jumped up into the air, and momentarily the witness thought that the perimeter fence would hinder their escape. But to his amazement, he saw how both of the hairy humanoids simply zoomed into the air and levitated over the fence. The humanoids then flew away and vanished above the tall pine trees in the forest which surrounded the military installation. The witness then stopped his pursuit, returned back to the fence, and saw 2 tracks of footprints, which were left in the snow. The layer of snow was thick and strong. Evidently, the tall, hairy humanoids were very heavy. However, the footprints seemed to become dimmer and less deep as they neared the fence, indicating that the humanoids apparently began ascending into the air. Other soldiers reported seeing the footprints, but were reluctant to report it to their commanding officers. Today's third part of the upload. In the early 90s, I was with the teams in the Navy. We were sanctioned by an alphabet government agency to put a stop to several aggressive Sasquatch in the high country in western North Carolina. We all thought it was a joke at the mission briefing, but it was not a joke. My partner in our team of 12 was my swim buddy. He was Native American. This man was not scared of anything. Before we were ordered to go out during the briefing, all of these agents were showing us slides of what these creatures did to people, adults and children alike, as well as damage done to vehicles and home. Anyway, my buddy turned white with sheer fear. He told me that this is really bad. When we arrived in the little mountain village town, the sheriff met with us. He told us that he'd never been so happy to see the cavalry since he'd been in Korea. He showed us the actual places where, as he put it, this is where those fuckers, those hairy demons, destroyed this or killed him, her, them, there. My buddy was taking everything in, like I never saw him before. After talking with the sheriff, our lieutenant told us to fire up, because we are going hunting. As we were getting our gear ready, my buddy said to me, "You know, I always thought my grandfather was telling me scary stories about he and his brothers when they fought the wild men." We started about 1400. By 1600, we found lots and lots of tracks. We started tracking them. We made out at least 7 different individuals. We made first contact around 1930. And it was almost dark. The point man stopped dead in his tracks and spoke into his headset. "I see one, it's fucking huge." The lieutenant said, "If you have a shot, take it." He shot his massive hairy beast with a 7.62, and it acted like a mosquito bite. This creature turned around and let out this god-awful roar. Our point man quickly switched to full auto. This time the creature dropped like a rock after 10 7.62 rounds cut up his chest. After first contact, the agents radioed in and said they wanted one alive. Our lieutenant told them to go screw themselves. It took 3 days and nights with almost no sleep, but we dropped 7 hairy bastards. We found the missing people, or rather what was left of them. We had only 1 casualty when a team member was snatched straight up into a tree. There was nothing anyone could have done for him. To this day, thinking of those 3 days sends chills down my spine. You won't find those 3 days in any military record or mission log. Going into our mission debriefing, where normally we asked 1,001 questions about every shot fired, every angle we fired from, every angle we fired on. We were simply told that the past 3 days we were doing rigorous mountain training, and during that training period we lost a man. And with that, the debriefing team stood up and walked out. Now, normally we have individual briefing for the whole team, but this was the one and only time. It was just the team. So to answer your next question, after 3 days, government agents came in and removed all 7 corpses and flew them out. Today's fourth part of the upload. I'm a member of the United States Army, and I have a personal experience to share that comes from my deployment to Afghanistan. Due to the nature of my service, I cannot and will not share anything that will breach any level of OPSEC or InfoSec in any way, shape, or form, to reveal any details that will or can be construed as such to compromise any operations myself and other members of the United States military conduct on a daily basis. That being stated, here's my story. I'm a United States Army Infantry Squad Leader, a non-commissioned officer with 10 years in service, and I have 12 soldiers under my command in my squad. 10 soldiers and 2 non-commissioned officer team leaders. My soldiers are ranked E3 to E4 with 18 months experience, at the very least, with my team leaders having 4 to 5 years experience, respectively. All of us have at least one combat deployment, together with the senior of my soldiers having 2. All of us have enough experience in our service that we are absolutely confident in our abilities and skills as infantry soldiers, and know what to do and how to do it given any and all combat situations we encounter. So when we are given a mission as a squad separate from our platoon, we didn't really give any thought to the nature of the orders or the fact we would be a significant distance from our platoon or any ground assistance whatsoever, separate from any CAS or artillery we could call on and other assets available. I received the mission, issued the warno, made a plan, initiated movement, gathered recon, and completed the plan. I issued an OPORD, and we Oscar Miked. All the making an appearance of an unusual and routine mission, something we did daily and completed daily. And then we reached the objective. It all went to what I can only describe as hell given form. We had vehicles that were specially designed for being explosive resistant and armored enough to give us an edge in surviving a multitude of situations we would come across. It was dark, and we had NVGs on, approaching a small village, 7 buildings under cover of darkness, being as quiet as possible, ready for anything. We entered and cleared house after house and found bodies, a lot of bodies. So many it was hard to enter any dwelling without stepping on any of them. And I have never in 10 years seen anything as disturbing or as shocking as the condition the bodies were in, and the sheer number of numbing to behold. Some looked as if they were ripped or torn in half. That is no mistake of typing or description. I literally mean torn or ripped by sheer brute strength. Some looked crushed, as if a ton or more weight was slammed into them, and I mean pulped. I have run other human beings over with a 6-ton vehicle, and I know crushed when I see it. And others looked as I would expect if I were to eat a piece of raw meat with my teeth. If I had teeth like a shark or some sort of carnivore, like something had taken a big damn chunk off of them and kept going, and the rest looked like I would imagine some sort of mythical monster or something with claws or teeth or sharp anything would have gone through them like such a defenseless flesh all over at once. We finally reached the end of the village and met something I can only describe as the closest to demonic as human language can make it. And it was goddamn terrifying. Thinking about it as I type this gives me chills, makes my heart feel like it's going to burst from my chest. And at any moment that thing will come bursting from somewhere and do unspeakable things to me before it kills me, ripping me apart like a rag doll full of blood and flesh. I still have nightmares about it. The first vehicle opened up on it with a 50 cal, and he was going cyclic. Next thing I know, I see a 6-ton armored vehicle that can take up to 80 pounds of explosive force come back rolling. Literally fly, not roll, not flip, fly. It landed in the middle of the freaking village in pieces. 6 tons of armor flew 700 meters. My vehicle was next, and I have never cycled an automatic grenade launcher so damn fast in my whole career. I was linking belt after belt after belt, and I was unjamming it almost as fast as it jammed. I'm screaming my head off on the radio at the same time, trying to get a hold of my other vehicle. Call in Cass or Artie, and ordered my squad to shoot the damn thing with every weapon we had, even though I know for a fact that we were doing it anyway. And I'm still screaming. I can hear screaming and gunfire and some other shit that sounds like millions of voices screaming at us, with explosions and tearing metal. Absolute chaos is in control here. And I'm screaming, crying, and praying. But then the craziest shit happened. Everything went absolutely silent. No sound, no voices, no gunfire, no explosions. Nothing. The world went mute. And after that, everything slowly came back. My alpha team leader, who climbed up to me, had to slap me hard to snap me out of whatever hell zone I was in. My best guess is shock, but unlike anything I heard, experienced, or watched, it took hours for me to get in together and start attempting to control the situation, getting communications with LT, and come to grips. First priority was the first vehicle. We could not raise them on comms, so I sent 2 to go and see if they were alive or needed medical attention. I then realized we didn't get a BDA on the thing we just unloaded on. I directed my driver to get closer to the area, and I noticed something right off the damn bat. There was damage everywhere except for one spot, and in the spot was untouched and pristine, like it had never been subject to all the firepower we had directed at it. Not a single impact. There was no sign of that thing anywhere, not even a footprint. I've been deployed 7 times in 10 years, and I've never seen anyone or anything walk away from so much firepower. Ever. I know for a fact that no human on this earth could. My 5 soldiers in the first vehicle lived, miraculously, due to the cab being reinforced, but suffered severe blunt force trauma upon impact. Enough that all 5 in the vehicle were immediately given medical discharge and 100% disability a few months later. My other soldiers are all receiving the best psychological care possible, and I'm undergoing psychological evaluation as well due to the report I gave my command. The treatment given to me and my squad is no surprise. However, the way my report of the incident was handled and what happened after is very confusing and very frustrating. No more about this has been mentioned or acknowledged again. I don't care if someone believes me anymore, as every time I am asked about it and answer, I am met with reactions of disbelief or pity and sympathy for my damaged mental state. I am even attempting to be cleared to continue for service, and am forced to lie to my counselors and therapists about my progress in recovering from my experiences. I am still haunted by this incident, and it still gives me a racing heart just thinking of it. Thanks again, Sarge. Today's 5th part of the upload. When I was in high school, once upon a time, I had a teacher who was in the 3rd Army. He was in the hospital ward with Patton. When the guy was slapped, worshipped the ground Patton walked on. When they were liberating the death camps in Germany, Mr. P was with Patton. They went into one of the labs. Patton left sick. He couldn't take it. Mr. P walked out with him. He gave Mr. P his famous ivory-handled pistol and bullets and told him to go back and put them out of their misery. What they found, according to Mr. P, had once been human. He went in and did what Patton told him to do. He walked out and started drinking that night. He drank until 1970 or so, sobering up when he became a teacher. He's the reason I became active in politics and became a writer. I asked him about what he found that day. He said he would never speak of it. It was too vile and too horrible. Patton couldn't even take it. From what I gather, they then destroyed everything they could find, including notes and records. Patton didn't want to repeat the experimentation. I never thought much about it until a discussion of Duluth. I live in Lincoln County, so it's a New Mexico thing. There is so much military going on here, you finally give up even wondering about it. I never even thought about this, but Mr. P said Patton stressed the fact that he didn't want anyone coming across the records to repeat the experimentations. Is this what they are doing? This just leads to any number of questions, including the death of Patton. Mr. P swore he was murdered. This state was basically on lockdown during and after World War II, due to the bomb, Los Alamos, and the whole 9 yards. I've never given the Duluth story any credibility, but I could see the possibility of someone having rescued other records and continued the horror. According to one of my sources, the majority of 911 calls to the Reduso Downs police are dealing with our friendly local Bigfoot. My neighbor has seen it twice. It prowls around our condos. Freaked her out one night. Has freaked a friend. Something has tried to open my front door. When I looked out the peephole, this huge dark hand was over it, having opened my storm door, which I know was always locked. A few nights after that, something peed all over my door. This has happened several times. It pees a good 5 feet off the ground. No one wants to talk about it. I finally managed to get confirmation that one of the top hunters is tracking one about a mile east of me as the crow flies. We have a lot of weird stuff going on here. Today's sixth part of the upload. I had basic training at Fort Lewis, Washington. I was there from January of 71 to May of 71. I was assigned to Company E, 4th Battalion, 2nd Brigade. That is where my barrack was. Between the barracks was an open field 100 yards or more wide. On the other side of the field, the outline of the forest, trees began, and after them more trees and more trees. Anyway, it was winter, and it had snowed. The area was covered with snow. It was a cold, clear night. There was a full moon which illuminated the night sky. I can't recall what month it was. I was assigned guard duty in our barrack area. My shift was early morning hours, right after midnight. I was to walk for 2 hours patrolling our company area. You could hear the crunching of the snow under my boots as I walked. As I was walking toward the last barrack, I was facing an open field. I saw something in the distance in front of where the forest trees began. It was walking toward me, and then it would stop. Where it stood, I looked to the right side of the area and left side of the area, and saw only this thing in front of me. It started to move again toward me. I saw the silhouette of the figure that was all black. When it walked, it was swaying back and forth. Scared, I turned around and walked toward my barrack and went inside and told no one about what I saw. A day or two later, I think it was in Seattle Times newspaper, there were photos taken of a Bigfoot print in the snow near a fence at the ranch in the area. I wonder if this is what I saw that night. Today's seventh part of the upload. In March of 1988, I was the team commander of a Special Force A team conducting a strategic reconnaissance training in Alaska. There were 11 soldiers on the team with a lot of Special Force experience between them. We were wearing rucksacks and walking through the deep snow in a wooded area with cross-country skis. As we approached an area where the woods were too thick to go through with skis, I decided to walk ahead on the snowshoes, with 2 other soldiers to check out the way ahead. After walking about 200 meters into the thicker woods, we came across a set of tracks that immediately drew our attention. The tracks were obviously of a 2-legged creature walking through the woods, on a course perpendicular to our own. Human tracks of any kind are extremely rare in that part of Alaska, but these were particularly unique due to the length of the stride and the fact that there was no crushed snow on either the entry or exit side of the holes. I stopped to investigate. When each of us took off our snowshoes, we sank into the snow to the depth of about 2 feet above our knees. When we attempted to take a step in the deep snow, we left an area of crushed snow on the entry side of the hole, and then a crushed snow again upon taking our foot out of the hole to take the next step. Our feet made a drag mark in the snow as well, no matter how hard we tried to extract the foot without touching the surrounding snow. The best any of us could do was stride between steps of about 1.5 feet. The tracks we were looking at had a stride over 5 feet between steps and left the snow on both entry and exit from the hole totally untouched. After discussing the rational possibilities for a while, I sent one of my men back to bring up the rest of the team. Between the 11 men on the team, we had over 150 years of combined Special Force experience in the woods all over the planet. They also had extensive experience in tracking of everything with either 2 or 4 legs. We all studied the tracks and tried to come up with any reasonable explanation for what we were looking at. Only one explanation seemed to fit everything we saw, but it was not a reasonable explanation. Based on our group experience in tracking humans, we made an approximate determination as to the height and weight of the person who had made the tracks based on the stride and depth of the indentations in the snow. The group census was a 2-legged person about 9 feet tall and weighing approximately 500 to 600 pounds. That was our best educated guess. I then made a decision to set the training mission aside for a while and follow the tracks through the woods. Wearing snowshoes, we followed those tracks for about an hour before we heard it. From somewhere ahead of us, quite a distance from what we could tell, we heard the most horrific sound any of us had ever heard. Every other sound in the woods went instantly silent, and we could almost hear our hearts beating. The only other time any of us has heard that kind of silence in the woods or jungle was in the last seconds before initiating an ambush. It is as though every creature, insect in the woods knows that something is about to die, and they go silent out of fear of self-preservation. After hearing the sound, it was a cross between a howl and a roar. My team sergeant, the most senior and experienced member of my team, stopped me and said, "Sir, speaking for both myself and the rest of the team, we really do not want to know what is at the end of those tracks." This was surprising to me in that, through all their years in the Special Forces, these men have never expressed any fear of anything on 2 or 4 legs. I understood and agreed to resume our original mission. There was also a general consensus not to discuss the incident with anyone upon our return. Mind you that we were on a training mission and did not have live ammunition, so any eventual confrontation with whomever or whatever made those tracks would not have been without a great deal of danger. Our curiosity to know what it was that had made those tracks was overcome by the reality that we would be no match for it. More importantly, that we really did not want to know what was at the end of those tracks. Tracks in the snow are much easier to deny and ignore than actually seeing what made them. My soldiers and I were afraid of what we heard and saw, and soldiers just didn't want to know. The tracks stayed on our military crest of ridgelines and low areas as much as possible. The only times the tracks crossed the ridgeline was in the saddle, where it would not have been seen. The thing was which struck us odd. While the tracks depicted someone far too large to be human, whatever was making the tracks was moving through the woods exactly as one of us would if we were conducting an escape and evasion. Whatever it was knew the land as it maneuvered to bypass clearings well before they came into view, and was making a concentrated effort to remain unseen. I still think that the sound we heard was intended to warn us to back off and not to follow. I have thought back on that incident 100 times and wondered how it would have turned out if we proceeded to follow those tracks. There are pros and cons to both sides of the issue. As for me, there are just some things that cannot be denied. Since then, I have a very healthy respect for Sasquatch. Today's 8th part of the upload. In 1940, my grandfather volunteered for active duty and was later shipped off to Camp Stewart, Georgia. He had graduated from high school in New York City a year before and thought the United States would be fighting in a war eventually, so he signed up before he was drafted. At the time, he was part of an anti-aircraft training unit that was housed in large tents. Camp Stewart, now Fort Stewart, was a fairly new facility, and much of it was under construction. Most of the tents were in or near an area that was densely forested. I don't know how many guys were in the tent with him, but he was friends with another guy from New York City named Pete. They hadn't been there long when stories about weird creatures in the woods started to circulate among the soldiers. One of the rumors was a few soldiers had been attacked by an unknown beast within the camp. There wasn't a lot said to no one, and he believes no one ever witnessed the attacks. One early morning, Grandpa John and Pete, along with the other soldiers, were transporting garbage to an area north of the camp. He said there was a large ditch where all the refuse was dumped. It was hauled in large barrels, which were emptied one by one. He was in the lead truck as they pulled up to the dumping area. They noticed a very large dog on the back edge of the ditch, which looked to be huge. While they were talking among themselves, the dog stood up on its two back legs and looked directly at them. After a few seconds, it turned and dropped down onto four legs and ran into the woods. They were alarmed and considered leaving, but there were armed personnel on patrol. They then wondered why armed soldiers needed to guard the garbage dump. They quickly got their work done because they wanted to leave as soon as possible. Grandpa John said that he later had a conversation with one of the guys who had spent time guarding the garbage dump. According to him, the higher-ups were aware of the large dogs, which he believed to be wolves. He said that there are other similar beasts in the area, and they were ordered to shoot, to kill, if they had the opportunity. He admitted that he had witnessed one of these wolves stand up on two legs and walk, though he didn't say why he failed to shoot it. Grandpa John was later injured during training, but after 2 years he was cleared for assignment and served in the United States Army in Europe. He said that over the years he talked with other vets who had trained at Fort Stewart. A few of them were aware of the attacks, and that it probably occurred on more than one occasion. All right, folks, I hope you all enjoyed this Memorial Day ending this upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Just a bunch of uploads jam-packed full of military experiences with the cryptids that we all know and fear. With that being said, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. Your support is what makes the channel continue to grow and go, and honestly, what gives people a chance to share their experiences and theories judgment-free, simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real, they're out there, and they are dangerous. Share this info with those you care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth. God bless.